Lincoln Riley could give a good, about the college football playoff rankings, but should he? And all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college related, sports related. We have a good time, and today we're going to talk about Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma and the debut of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's rankings, which come out Tuesday night, November 5th. And Riley was asked about it, and I want to talk about it and let you hear from him what he had to say. But hey, look, sign up for my newsletter because I dropped it. You get a chance to win this bad boy if you sign up between now and December 7th. There's a link in the doobly-doo. I'm going to give this lamp away to somebody. Maybe you're not an OU fan. That's fine. Whatever. Troll your favorite Texas fan with it, favorite Oklahoma State fan. I don't know. If you root for Notre Dame, maybe you have a use for this because everybody seems to know an Oklahoma fan, somebody they want to troll, or maybe give it away as a dirty Santa present, whatever it might be. But yeah, sign up in the doobly-doo for the newsletter where I have exclusive interviews, exclusive videos, all those sorts of good goodies. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm writing some really cool stuff and links to all the stuff that I'm doing and free stuff. I like giving stuff away. So Lincoln Riley was asked, hey, look, do you care about the college football playoff rankings? Are you at least curious about where you might be ranked? And let's take a listen.
Yeah, Lincoln, I know you can't do anything about it, but the committee comes out with its first rankings tomorrow night. How curious are you to see where you're at, considering you're in a little bit more precarious spot than in the previous years because of a lot of different factors? Well, how much will you bother?
Zero. Just win. You win games. You get a chance to win your league. You win this league, then things take care of themselves. We've seen that as much as anybody over the last few years. So we got a lot of great opportunities coming up. We got to take care of ourselves right now and just try to win every single game that we possibly can. And so, and then after that, it's out of our control. So we just got to go win.
So you won't watch it, or
I won't.
Will you let somebody tell you where you're ranked, or will you say
no? Not that crazy about it. I just don't put stock in it. It just doesn't. Go look where we were ranked. The previous years after we lost the game. I mean, it just, there's so much left to happen. And I know this, you keep winning and you win your league championship, and if you keep winning and doing the things that you can and play to your potential as a team, those things tend to work themselves out. And like I said, we've seen it. So it just, not trying to hide away from it. I just know that just from experience, it does not matter right now. It really doesn't. And the only one that matters is that one at the very end.
So that's Riley saying he could give a good, about the playoff selection committee rankings. And I get it. There's lots of people out here that don't really care about the rankings. They don't care about the rankings until the final ranking comes out on December 8th, following all the conference championship games, when we see all of the play and how it's evaluated. But it does give us a good starting point for what actually matters. I've been doing this thing where I take a weekly look at the AP and see what the Associated Press voters have been thinking about the best teams in college football. And we know that the rankings are subjective, but it's the only way that we have to get to a national champion right now. And as much as I don't like this process of selecting teams to play for the privilege of a national championship, that's what we have. And these rankings matter because we're going to hold this selection committee accountable for the rankings that they put out. And we're going to want to see some symmetry here. And we're going to want to know what they put an emphasis on, especially if you have a loss. Because Oklahoma obviously has a loss to Kansas State. And Kansas State was ranked on the strength of its win against Oklahoma. And now it's at number 20. Will that matter to the committee as opposed to Baylor being undefeated? We know that Baylor is behind a couple of one-loss teams, and we like, hey, look, I thought that wins and losses mattered here, to which people are like, hey, if you take into account what Baylor has done so far and who they've played, you might think that they have had an easy run of it. So we're going to penalize Baylor for its really bad schedule where they played a winless Rice team, but we're going to give more credit to a Georgia team that lost to South Carolina at home. These are all things for which I think we all want answers, and we want to hear Rob Mullins actually talk about this stuff, who's going to be front and center and give his talk to ESPN, and then I'm going to chop it up after the fact, and we're all going to talk about it for a week, and then we're going to play a bunch of games. And that's kind of the thing that Riley was getting at. There's so much football that's left to be played. And for Oklahoma, what has been true is if you make it through the Big 12 conference with one loss and you win the conference championship, the committee's going to put you in. Now, because they're human beings, I wonder if bias is going to play in here, because the last couple of times that the selection committee has put Oklahoma into the semifinal, it hasn't turned out to be a good game for Oklahoma against Alabama, of course, but even in Georgia, they laid an egg because the defense didn't show up. And now the conversation becomes, do we want to put a team into the college football playoff that does not have a competent defense? Well, Oklahoma gets to say this year it has a competent defense. No matter what you think of Oklahoma this year, you have to say that Alex Grinch, coming onto the staff, bringing Brian Odom, and Roy Manning, has just done a really remarkable job turning around this defense. Oklahoma averaged 33 points allowed a game last year. This year, they're at 23, cutting nearly a third off of that total last year. They're also been really good outside of the games the game that they lost. And even then, you're talking about scoring more than 27 points just twice this year. Houston, I keep forgetting about Houston. Houston scored 31 on this team. And that might be taken into account when you're talking about what Oklahoma is going to be ranked. I think if Oklahoma ends up in the top 10, it's fine, because we all believe that Ohio State, LSU, and Alabama are going to be in the top 3. The order, I believe the selection committee is going to rank Ohio State at number 1, and that's the one that's going to matter. I think Bama and LSU are going to be at 2 and 3, and then they're going to play to see who's the best team, not just the SEC West, but likely in the SEC Conference. But we're going to be paying attention to just how much of an emphasis is put on Georgia, because right now, that is the third best team in the SEC. And they're in the driver's seat to come out of the SEC East, which means they would play the winner of the SEC West in the conference championship. And then we're into another scenario where we could see 2, even 3 teams get into the college football playoff. And I don't think that the selection committee would be so crass as to put themselves in the position of having 3 SEC teams in the playoff, or, with 4 teams plus, say, Ohio State, who might run the table. But we also got to take into account, what do they think of Minnesota, who has played more or less a schedule that is a little bit weaker than Baylor, but they're still undefeated. They play Penn State this weekend. If they beat undefeated Penn State, will they get more of a nod? Penn State, undefeated, beat up on a really good Michigan team, among others. And if they beat Minnesota, will it matter to this selection committee? Because we still have a lot of football, and we have a lot more undefeated teams than a lot of people thought we would have at this particular juncture. Nobody had the Golden Gophers as being undefeated. Nobody had Baylor as being undefeated. You don't have a group of 6 team that you have to figure into it, because they beat up on each other, with Appalachian State taking a loss and Southern Methodist taking a loss in Week 10. So heading to Week 11, it's all about Power 5 teams. And I've always thought that it was funny that the process that was agreed upon was 4 in when there are 5 power conferences, and you guys are the ones that put together this idea of a college football playoff selection. But be that as it may, I think that Oklahoma is right where it should be, and if they're rated 7, 8, 9, 10, they got to be happy about that. I think the only shocker for me would be if Oklahoma ranks outside of the top 10, which is not out of the question, depending on how you feel about Wake Forest, who's a 1-loss team, and depending on how you feel about Auburn and having losses to LSU and Florida, or how you feel about Florida, who has losses to LSU and Georgia. Again, lots of questions to be answered by the selection committee, and there's lots of people that say, put me on it, but I don't think you want to be on it, because there's some really hard choices that have to be made, and you have to be consistent on what the criteria is for what you use to make those choices, and you can't deviate from that criteria going forward. And yes, they have criteria that they've listed on the website, but we're not always sure that they use it, because the scoreboard doesn't seem to matter, because we can have 1-loss teams that might be ahead of undefeated teams, which is to say that it's okay that you lost if you lost to somebody good. No, we're not rating your roster. We're not rating 4 stars versus 5 stars. We're rating who won the games and who lost the games. And that's the part of this process that infuriates me and infuriates many, because you should get credit for being undefeated. If you go undefeated with a weak schedule in a Power 5, sorry, that's what happened. If you go undefeated, period, because it's just so hard to go undefeated in college football. Seriously, take a look at who went undefeated last year. Who was it? Right? We're talking about Clemson. Who else? Nobody. Nobody else went undefeated in college football. The year before that, we're talking about UCF, who needs all the credit in the world, because to go undefeated at any level in college football cannot be overstated. It's just so hard to do. And I think that if you are a group of 6 team or you are a low power 5 team like a Baylor, you should get full credit because everybody's trying to beat you. And the more you win, the more people want to beat you. And now that we know that Oklahoma and Baylor is going to kick off at 6:30 on Saturday night next week, and it's the ABC primetime game, you know that Baylor is going to get every bit of Oklahoma, especially if Oklahoma dispatches Iowa State at home this week. So this is all going to be really fascinating. It's my favorite time of year, and I cannot wait to chop it up after I know that the committee's probably going to botch these rankings. All right, it for me. Doses.